Hi, I'm Siege from the Puma podcast team. If you like listening to this show and others created by our team, you can help us keep making them through our Puma Patak tip jar. Our goal is to get 100 of you, our friends, to make a contribution and show your support for the journalism and storytelling that we do. We're happy to keep making shows that you can listen to for free, but making them isn't free, so we appreciate any support you send our way. All you need to do is to go to pumapodcast.com where you'll find a link to the Puma Patak tip jar.
Hi, I'm Bella Perez Rubio, Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News. Balitang thinking, hindi breaking. In this episode,
a little more detail. So the President will be leading our economic team composed of government officials and business leaders. And we will present the country's economic performance, which tops growth in the region, before an audience of international CEOs.
President Marcos is gearing up for yet another trip, the 8th one in the 7 months he's been in office. This time, he's headed to the snowy alpine mountains of Davos, Switzerland.
The World Economic Forum remains the premier forum for world and business leaders to get together, to interact, come up with ideas and plans to address the many challenges and opportunities facing our global economy.
That's Foreign Affairs Undersecretary Carlos Soreta. He says the president will not just be representing the country, but the region at this high-profile forum.
The president will be the only leader from ASEAN to be in Davos, and he will be only one of 2 leaders from Asia. So he will be in a wonderful position to represent not only our country, but how our own region, ASEAN and the East Asia region, can be the engine of growth for the world economy.
Like I said, this would make it the 8th foreign trip for the president. By his own admission, his own mother has expressed concern over his trips and schedule.
Like my mom says, kailan ka nag-uopisina?
So what are we getting out of these expensive trips abroad? It's a relevant question because there are several domestic issues that require the president's immediate attention. There's the still vacant position of health secretary amid a global pandemic, and the fact that we're in the middle of a food crisis. Onions are literally now more expensive than meat, and the president himself is directly in charge of the agriculture portfolio. But Undersecretary Soreta insists this trip won't be taking Marcos away from work.
There were no other engagements of the president that was compromised. It's a good time to go to Switzerland and attend the WEF. There's no other thing planned for this window. I know it's a long trip. He'll be away for 5 days. So we had to block that off. And there's one coming up in a few weeks.
And there's another reason Marcos is so set on attending this year's gathering of the world's richest and most powerful. He wants to pitch his Maharlika fund to them directly.
The president said that we have developing all these excellent fundamentals and there's much that we can offer investors. And he said, let's talk about the Sovereign Wealth Fund that's being set up. And I agree completely with the president. The World Economic Forum is a great venue to do a sort of soft launch for our Sovereign Wealth Fund, given the prominence of the forum itself and global and business leaders who will be there. And they will hear it directly from the president.
The Senate has not even tackled the controversial Sovereign Wealth Fund proposal yet. Remember, it was rushed through the lower house by Marcos's family and allies last year. In the meantime, Soreta assured that the so-called soft launch in Davos won't step on congressional toes.
My understanding is it will be broad strokes. Like I said, we have to leave the specifics to the legislation. People do this all the time in fora like this. In my past attendance in WEF, there have been launches. I remember Bill Gates launched some initiatives in Africa in a soft way. It's more to inform the world. It's really one of the best places to do it. And I have to say, it's the president's idea. I regret.
We'll pause here, but when we return, we talk about the other reason this trip to Switzerland is raising eyebrows. Another thing this trip has done is resurface the Marcos family's awkward history with Switzerland and the law. Recall that it was from Swiss deposits that some $688 million in Marcos' ill-gotten wealth were retrieved. That money was returned to the Filipinos through the Presidential Commission on Good Government. But Undersecretary Sureta says Marcos traveling to Switzerland won't cause any legal issues.
Hindi naman po siguro. Meron po tayong malinaw na framework for legal cooperation with Switzerland. Nag-negotiate po tayo ng mga agreements for cooperation on legal matters. Yung mga matters that may relate to this issue that you are referring to. And none of those mechanisms have been triggered by the Swiss government or anything. So I don't think it's an issue.
The PCGG, as of 2021, is still chasing some 125 billion pesos in Marcos family loot. Some even joked that the president might attempt to visit some Swiss banks while there. After all, it was actually Marcos Jr.'s failed attempt to withdraw over $200 billion from his family's account with Credit Suisse that caused the bank to freeze it in 1986. The theme for this year's World Economic Forum is cooperation in a fragmented world. The cost of living crisis and the prospect of recession are expected to dominate conversations. And Undersecretary Sureta is right. There will be plenty of chances to push our agenda.
There will be a stakeholder dialogue on nutrition. Food security, of course, very important, but nutrition is also very important. Through the President's participation, we'll be able to push for our priorities in food and nutrition, in energy security.
But one criticism of the World Economic Forum that has grown over the years is that it's become a mere talk fest, where lofty ideas discussed here often fail to materialize. A high-end schmooze fest among the capitalists of the world, in other words. So the question remains, can the president make it worth the week that he'll be stepping away from real, urgent concerns here in the Philippines? Will we get real returns for the taxes that will be spent putting up his delegation in a 5-star resort? This is a question we'll have to keep asking because the president is on a roll. He's just come back from China and already there's a trip lined up to Japan. Not to mention that he's planning to hit all APEC countries too.
What countries have invited me? All. What countries will I accept? All.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka News. Again, I'm Bella Perez Rubio. This episode was produced by me and edited by Joe Salcedo. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or two. And don't forget to follow Teka Teka News and Puma Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. At para sa mga mahilig manood sa YouTube, Puma Podcast na rin po kami doon. Just search Puma Podcast and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for listening.